Hello friend! This is the first video that I'm recording since having our son Jackson last month. He's currently napping on Ryan and I thought I would take this opportunity to throw on some makeup, feel like a little bit of a human again, and record my home birth Q&A. I asked over on my Instagram story just any questions that you had about birth or my home birth experience, and I thought that this first video would be perfect to answer all of your questions. There's a lot, so let's just jump right in. At any point did you regret having a home birth? No. I loved my experience. The afterbirth experience was definitely not what we were expecting or hoping for, but that doesn't make me feel like I regret having a home birth in general, because the whole experience of laboring here in our room and in the comfort of our own home was just amazing, and I couldn't have asked for a better experience. There was one point where I regret not having an option for pain relief because I did it here, and with midwives they don't carry an epidural or traditional pain relief like they do at the hospital. So there was one point where I was like, I feel absolutely crazy for thinking that I could do this unmedicated at home. Like, what am I doing? But obviously I pushed through it and got through it, and so very proud of myself, but I don't have any regrets for doing a home birth. Were there moments where you thought you couldn't do it? Yes. So around like 10:30 at night, I was already in labor for about 25 hours at that point. I remember just being so exhausted from being awake from Sunday morning, and it was Monday night at that point, and then just also pushing and just being in labor for so long. And I remember turning to Ryan and whispering to him that I didn't think I could go on. I was like, I am done. I can't do this anymore. I can't. Like, I needed to stop. He obviously was encouraging and told me I could do it, and all of a sudden, like, I just got this second wind and this like fire under my butt to like finish it out. And then about like 30 minutes later is when Jackson came out. Did you tear? And if you did you feel it in the moment? So I did have a little tear that resulted in one stitch, but I don't remember when it happened. My midwives were amazing at kind of stretching me out during pushing and when Jack was coming out, and they also used almond oil to like lube it up down there. So I really think that those two things helped me not tear more, but I don't remember like when it actually happened. And I was under anesthesia when they were taking out my placenta when they stitched me up, so I have no memory of being stitched up either. Is there anything that you do different next time? Yes, so there was a few things. I made a birth playlist. I picked out a video on YouTube of relaxing waves, and then I also downloaded a hypnobirthing app, and I didn't use any of them. I don't really know why. I guess I just like wasn't into it. I remember Ryan asking me at one point if I wanted to put the waves video on, and I was like, not yet, it's too early. And then we just never did. My doula did end up putting on a piano version of Taylor Swift songs, so I did have some music during pushing, but I wish that I put on the playlist that I made. I think all of those things that I prepped beforehand and then didn't end up using would have really helped me get out of my head and more into labor. Was there a specific point in labor that was the hardest? Yes, the very end of labor was definitely the hardest. At that point, I had been pushing for like an hour and a half. I was so exhausted. I was very sweaty. It was really hot in our room. The two portable fans that we had died, no more battery, so Ryan was having to use like one of those like manual paper fans. Because he was about to come out, my midwives didn't want to put on our ceiling fan or like the big fan that we have in our room because it would have been too cold for him. So I really just had to like A, push through the pain, B, I was just so sweaty, and then C, I was just exhausted. So that was definitely the very hardest part of labor. How was it being unmedicated? I would like to do the same, but nervous I can't. First off, you absolutely can. If I learned anything throughout this whole experience is that we are mentally stronger than we give ourselves credit. Our bodies know exactly what to do. And as cheesy as this is gonna sound, is you can do anything that you set your mind to. So if you decide you want to do an unmedicated birth, you can definitely do it. So I went into labor with like the expectation that it was going to be the most painful thing ever, and it was definitely intense and painful, but it was so much more doable than I thought it would be, and I would definitely do an unmedicated labor for my next baby. What Taylor song was Jack born to? And it's Happiness from Evermore. How did they know Jack needed to be in the NICU where you transfer to the hospital afterwards? So when Jackson was born, he started to sound very bubbly and congested, and I could see snot coming out of his nose. And so my midwives and doula started sucking all that fluid out with a bulb syringe out of his nose and his mouth. And they noticed that his blood oxygen level was dropping, so they gave him some oxygen, and then I can't for the life of me remember what the device was, but they put it over his mouth, and it had like a little tube, and they put their thumb over it just to help him get that blood oxygen up. And so his numbers would go up, and then they would kind of fall, and then they'd go up, and so he wasn't stabilizing himself. And so my midwives called 911. Once the EMTs got to our house, we did make the decision to transfer him to the hospital in the ambulance. On his way over, they gave him more oxygen, and by the time he got to the hospital, he was pink, he sounded better, and his numbers were stable, but they admitted him to the NICU just to monitor him to make sure that there was no inflammation and that everything was out of his lungs and that he could breathe on his own. So we're really glad that we made the decision to transfer him to the hospital. What were the main decision factors in why you selected a home birth versus a hospital or a birthing center? So this is kind of a long answer that I'm going to try to keep short. I wrote down some points so that I wouldn't forget, but kind of what started the whole home birth interest was we have a really good friend who has had 3 babies. The first one was born at a birthing center, and then the last 2 were at home, and she had the most amazing home birth experiences, and she says that she wished that she would have done the first one at home. So knowing that she had great home birth experiences and that it was possible really made me interested in just kind of exploring that as an option for myself. But some of the main factors that went into us deciding home birth versus hospital were I really wanted to have an unmedicated, little to no intervention birth, and I knew that if I was at the hospital, I would have the option for an epidural or any other pain relief. And so by doing it at home, I knew I couldn't ask for it and that it would just kind of eliminate all of that. And so that was a big factor. Another really big factor is I didn't want to be hooked up to any machines and be potentially told no into a birthing position that my body wanted to go in because I was either hooked up or they just wanted me to be in bed. So by doing it at home, I was free to just kind of do what I wanted, walk around, and not feel like I had to be hooked up to something that was beeping at me 24/7. I really loved the idea of being in the comfort of my own home, not having to drive anywhere and then be turned away by either being too early or stressing about not getting to the hospital on time. I loved the idea of being able to just be able to eat and drink and move around freely by being at home. So at 9 weeks, we decided to interview a midwife at a hospital and then home birth midwives, which are the midwives we ended up picking. And we asked them both the same set of questions, and we just felt like the midwife at the hospital felt very medical and cut and dry, and we just didn't feel like a connection with her. And then we also found out that there was 4 or 5 other midwives that were in rotation that we'd have to see throughout our pregnancy. So the midwife that we were interviewing might not even be the midwife that would be there on delivery. We didn't love the idea of making a connection with one specific midwife and then feeling very disappointed and anxious when that midwife wasn't on call for the day that we went into labor. Whereas the home birth midwife, there was only 2 of them, and so we did see them every other week, and it just felt like it was 2 people we were getting to know. When we interviewed them at the beginning, we just felt it was very calm and relaxing. We felt very connected to both of them right from the start. So the nail in the coffin that kind of solidified our decision was we asked both sets of midwives if I wasn't progressing fast enough in labor, what tools in your pocket would you use to kind of keep me going and progress labor? And the midwife at the hospital just started talking about forceps and vacuums and all these medical terms, and we just kind of looked at each other that's definitely like not what we want, especially because we want like a little to no intervention birth. And then when we asked the home birth midwives the same question, they were like, well, we'd start moving you around into different positions and trying different body techniques, getting you out of the water if you're in the water, or putting you in the water for the home, like for a water birth. And so the difference in answers were just like 0 to 100, and we just were like, yes, this is the route that we want to take. We want it to be more natural. We want it to be just little to no intervention. And the fact that you even said forceps and vacuums in an interview, it was just like, it scared us away. And so that really made us feel like we were making the best decision for ourselves. How do you even get started on the home birth journey? Considering it myself when the time comes. Because we had the friend who had her home birth here in Tennessee, we just contacted her midwives because she raved about them and had a great experience. So it was pretty easy for us to get connected to our midwives. So I would just recommend doing your research on midwives who specialize in home births in your area, or join a Facebook group of moms who can give you real life recommendations and feedback if they've worked with a midwife in your area. Word of mouth is going to be probably your best bet of finding a good home birth midwife. What birthing position worked best for you while pushing? So we tried everything. My hope was to do a water birth, but my body was just way too comfortable in the warm water, and so that really slowed contractions down. So we moved me over to the bed. We did all fours on my back, a squat, and then that basically is what really got him out, was doing a squat, and then they got me quickly on my back, and I just pushed on my back with my legs up. So try it all. Don't really go into labor with like one expectation of how you're gonna push, because it might not happen that way if your body's too relaxed or it's just not working. So just be flexible with that and just try it all. Can you talk about the mental exercises that prepped you for labor and what helped you the most? So I took an online course to prepare for having an unmedicated birth, and it was amazing. I'll link it down below. I definitely recommend it. I think that the information in it is so valuable and helpful, but it all just kind of went out the window when I went into labor. The only thing that really stuck with me was just breathing through each contraction and then giving myself permission to like make noises with each one. She really talks about how like low, deep pitched noises helps like get through the contraction and not have it hurt as much. She says that pain comes from like the higher pitch and like tensing up your body, and so I tried to do that with every single contraction, and I think it really helped. I also think what helped was trying to stay positive, and with every contraction being like you're one step closer to meeting your baby. That's one less contraction that you have to do. I was not perfect at this the whole time. There was times where I was like, this is never ending and I hate this. But trying to stay positive through it all, and then also like joking and laughing and keeping it lighthearted. Definitely think that being positive, breathing, making deep noises, and then laughing and joking as much as possible will definitely help with all the pain. What surprised you during labor? What was better/worse than you thought? I love this question, and I think that my strength was the best surprise ever. I knew in theory going into it that I could definitely do an unmedicated birth, but like the strength that you get to push forward, literally push, was just so amazing and beautiful and surprising, and I'm just so proud of myself and my body for doing it. So that was such a cool surprise. And then the worst surprising part was the pushing phase. I heard so many stories of women just like doing 2 pushes and the baby was out, so I kind of thought that like the pushing phase was going to be like 5 minutes, and I ended up pushing for 2.5 hours. So that was definitely a shock. I thought that that would be the fastest part, and it was not. Also, the ring of fire that they talk about is no freaking joke. It's very fast, but it is probably the worst pain of the whole labor, and you really have to push through it or else it's never gonna end. So just push forward and that baby will come out. Given your afterbirth experience didn't go as expected, would you do a home birth again? I definitely would. I think that everything that happened after delivery would have happened the exact same way, even if we were at a hospital with the fluid in Jack's lungs and then my placenta not detaching from the stress. So everything that happened was very unpreventable, and it doesn't taint my home birth experience in any way. I definitely feel like I'm still mourning not having the home birth afterbirth experience that I was hoping for, and so I would kind of like to redeem that with the next one, as long as my midwives feel that it is still safe and doable for my next birth. I'd love to do it with the same midwives, so obviously we'd be working together. They know exactly what happened with this labor, and if at any point they say, hey, we don't think this is safe for either of you, we're gonna probably recommend you transferring to a hospital setting, then I would do it. But if they say you're good to go, the next one, I definitely would like to do another home birth. If we have a fourth, we're considering a home birth. What was the pricing like for you guys? So for our experience, we didn't go through insurance, we just paid exclusively through our HSA. Our midwives had a flat fee, which included all of the prenatal appointments and birth, and then there were additional charges for any blood testing that we did throughout the pregnancy, the glucose test, the gender reveal blood test that we ended up doing, and then we added on the birthing pool, which was a separate expense. And the way that my midwife structured out the payments was we made a portion of the payment each prenatal appointment, and then at 37 weeks we paid the remaining balance, and that was kind of like the go time, and we just waited for birth after that. I don't want you to quote me on this because our midwives may change their pricing, or it might be different with a different midwife that you go with, but ours was about $5,000 for the flat fee and then the additional charges. Did you have a doula, and at what point in your pregnancy did you get her? I did, and it was one of the best decisions ever. We hired her right away. The second that we decided to do a home birth and we picked our midwives, I contacted this doula because I knew how busy and in demand she was, and I really wanted to get on her calendar. And so I was on it. I contacted her, we sat down for a meeting, felt like the best connection ever, and then we decided to hire her. My doula was such a calm, loving, and knowledgeable presence throughout the whole birth. She really helped me mentally and then also physically get into different positions and help get the baby down and out. And so she just was such like an amazing tool, and if you can afford a doula, I would definitely recommend one. What was your initial thought the second that Jack was born? So I definitely had just like a million emotions running through me. I felt an overwhelming sense of love and relief and joy, and the second that he started crying, I started crying. It was so beautiful to hear his cry and to see him out in the world. And so if I could describe it all in one word, it would definitely be love. And then that quickly turned into stress, anxiety, and fear because he was having trouble breathing and just didn't look right. So I definitely felt all of the human emotions all at once, but I will never forget the joy and love and just relief that I felt the second that he came out and I saw him. So I know that was a lot, and thank you for sticking with me. I just wanted to make sure that I answered all of your questions the best that I could. I know that when I was going into figuring out if home birth was the right option for me, I watched a ton of YouTube videos on vlogs and Q&As, so I hope this video was helpful for you and that it gave you some clarity and a glimpse into home birth and birth in general. And I'm so excited to be back on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video.